3 years after his world had crumbled, Ethan Vance saw Caleb Thorne again. He was on his knees in the private room of an upscale Manhattan lounge, a space thick with the scent of expensive whiskey and the vapid laughter of heirs to fortunes they hadn't earned. As glass after glass was pressed to his lips, his awareness began to fray at the edges. That was when Caleb entered. The men around him straightened, their sycophantic greetings filling the air. But Caleb's gaze, cold and sharp, found only Ethan. He was summoned to pour a drink for the newcomer. They called him Mr. Thorne, a name spoken with reverence. Ethan was just the nameless server. He presented the crystal tumbler with a steady hand, his eyes fixed on the floor as he murmured the required honorific. A low, humorless laugh was Caleb's only reply before he took the glass. A moment passed, then the world tilted as icy liquid cascaded over Ethan's head. The dark amber spirit streamed down his face, soaking the collar of his uniform. A single word cut through the silence, spoken by Caleb with chilling disdain: "Dirty." The room fell quiet, the other patrons glancing over, surprised. Caleb Thorne, for all his imperious and notorious demeanor, was not known for such public displays of cruelty. Ethan simply lowered his head further, letting the liquor drip from his hair, his voice devoid of any emotion as he acknowledged that Mr. Thorne's lesson was received. Seeing Caleb again was like this. There was no shock, no shame, no flicker of the old fire. For years had stripped him of his former pride, grinding his resentment and sorrow into a fine, gray dust of apathy. He was almost grateful for the hollowness inside him now. It allowed him to see Caleb Thorne and feel nothing, to treat him as just another guest. Caleb said nothing more, perhaps having sated his initial anger. Ethan turned to make his exit, a silent dismissal, but Caleb's voice, sharp and commanding, stopped him, questioning if permission had been granted for his departure. Ethan pursed his lips and turned back. One of Caleb's entourage seemed to finally place his face, an exclamation of recognition slicing the air. He identified Ethan Vance, the former tyrant of their university days, and marveled aloud at how far he had fallen. Ethan remained silent, a statue absorbing the verbal blows. Seeing an opportunity, another man offered to teach Ethan a lesson on Caleb's behalf. But Caleb waved him off. Instead, he ordered a line of whiskey shots placed on the bar. He uncapped a bottle and pushed it toward Ethan. He laid out the terms: $10,000 for every shot. For all 10, $500,000. Ethan glanced at the label. A single bottle was worth more than his monthly earnings. The math was simple. He took the bottle and downed the first shot in a single burning swallow. The high-proof liquor seared his throat, and despite his tolerance, his stomach roiled. He steeled himself, reaching for the third, but a hand clamped down on his wrist. He looked up into Caleb's eyes, which held a storm of disbelief. Caleb's voice was low, questioning who this pathetic display was for, reminding him of the arrogance he once wore like a crown. Ethan shook his head, his vision blurring. The $500,000 was a siren's call. He tried to pull his hand free, but Caleb's grip was iron. A pause, and then with a sudden, violent motion, Caleb swept the table clean. The crash of shattering glass echoed as the bottles hit the floor. He grabbed Ethan by the collar, hauling him close. His voice was a raw whisper, demanding to know why Ethan had become so utterly worthless. A fire was spreading through Ethan's stomach. He endured the pain, turned his head, and managed to point out that he had only consumed 2 shots. Caleb sneered, releasing him abruptly. As Ethan stumbled back, Caleb looked down on him, his expression one of pure contempt. He made his offer then, a proposition laced with venom. Since Ethan loved money so much, he could be Caleb's dog. 1 year, $2 million. Ethan agreed. The deal was designed to humiliate, to break what little was left of him. But to the man he was now, dignity was a currency he could no longer afford. Self-respect was worth less than the $10 bill he might find on the sidewalk. The first day at Caleb's penthouse, the conflict began immediately. Caleb pointed a dismissive finger at the single, battered suitcase Ethan carried. That garbage was not permitted inside his home. It was to be thrown away. Ethan stood at the threshold, head bowed, hesitating for a moment before explaining that his clothes were inside. Caleb cut him off, his tone sharp. He declared that Ethan was now his dog, and what he was given was all he would have. Everything Ethan owned was discarded. Even the clothes on his back were soon stripped away. Caleb's touch was not gentle. It was a violent, desperate release, an act of exorcism rather than intimacy. Ethan became an object, a vessel for a rage he didn't fully understand, his body moving with the rhythm of the bed. It was a job that required no words, no thoughts. Caleb's breathing was labored, but he didn't stop. In the stark light of the bedroom, his sweat dripped onto Ethan's closed eyelids. A single drop landed with a soft tap, causing Ethan's exhausted body to tense. Then came Caleb's voice, low and guttural, a ragged whisper against his skin. A reminder that this was something Ethan owed him. He didn't remember when it ended. When he regained a sliver of consciousness, he had been cleaned and deposited back on the bed. He fell into a heavy, dreamless sleep, the kind of total exhaustion that had become his norm over the past 4 years. But tonight, perhaps because of Caleb, a dream did come. A ridiculous, painful dream of his youth. His beginning with Caleb had been simple. A single glance across a crowded university hall had been enough to ignite an obsession. A one-sided infatuation. Ethan had fallen for Caleb during the peak of his own arrogance and power. But Caleb was an iceberg, immune to his heat. Ethan recalled confronting him after learning that the month's worth of high-end groceries he'd sent to Caleb had been given away. Caleb, with his chiseled features and perpetually cold expression, was a campus legend, brilliant, beautiful, and utterly aloof. He stood at the top of the library stairs, looking down at Ethan and telling him to move, that he had a class to attend. Ethan, the indignant heir to the Vance fortune, was incensed. He had never worked so hard to please someone, only to be met with such dismissal. He declared that Caleb wasn't going anywhere until they talked. The students around them scattered. Ethan's reputation for casual bullying preceded him. Caleb's expression was tinged with sarcasm. He had no interest in talking and simply turned to leave. That was the final straw. Ethan lunged, but Caleb moved with surprising speed, blocking the attack, twisting his arm, and pinning him against the wall. Defeat was a foreign and humiliating sensation. Ethan snarled at him to let go. Caleb did, giving him one last, fleeting glance before walking away, leaving Ethan gritting his teeth in the hallway. He had never been so thoroughly thwarted. That night, he gathered his cronies and cornered Caleb in a secluded grove on campus. They beat him. Afterward, driven by some twisted logic, Ethan had him taken to the hospital. He stood over Caleb's hospital bed, watching the man who was too bruised to move. He'd lectured the prone figure, questioning what was so wrong with being with him. He offered money, a job at his father's company, a life of ease. He contrasted it with Caleb's current life of studying until dawn in the library. Caleb had finally deigned to look at him, his gaze lazy and filled with contempt. Thinking he was finally breaking through, Ethan leaned closer. But Caleb's words were like shards of ice. He made it clear, enunciating every word, that he, Caleb Thorne, would never be interested in men. And he would especially never be interested in someone like Ethan Vance. It was the most Caleb had ever said to him. Unfortunately, Ethan's arrogance at the time was boundless. He believed anything could be bought or achieved. If money wasn't working, he simply needed a new strategy. Caleb admired academic excellence, so Ethan decided to become a fixture at his side. In the following weeks, wherever Caleb was in the library, the seat next to him was always taken by Ethan. He brought him coffee when he looked tired, snacks when he studied late. Perhaps worn down by his persistence, Caleb stopped actively rejecting his offerings, though he never chased him away. As the final exam results were posted, Ethan stood before the bulletin board. Caleb's name was at the very top. His was at the very bottom. He felt a familiar surge of annoyance. Then he saw Caleb approaching. On impulse, Ethan blocked his path. He made a new offer. If Caleb tutored him and helped him get into the top 3 next semester, he would cover all of Caleb's living expenses for the next 4 years. He knew about Caleb's financial struggles, the self-employed parents, the sick sister. He presented it as a simple, mutually beneficial transaction. His hands on his hips in a posture of casual confidence that hid a churning anxiety. To his shock, Caleb agreed. His expression remained impassive, but he consented. Ethan suppressed his elation and pressed his advantage, asking if Caleb would come to his house for lessons over the summer. After a long, scrutinizing look, Caleb nodded. Ethan's heart hammered against his ribs. Money, he thought, truly was everything. He began to shadow Caleb openly. His father had bought him a sleek, modern house near the campus, and when Caleb came over, it became their private world. He feigned confusion over his studies just to have Caleb lean closer. He learned the small details of Caleb's life. His preference for dark chocolate, the way he subtly tapped his pen when deep in thought. His fondness for old jazz records, something Ethan discovered when Caleb thought he was out of the room. For Caleb's birthday, Ethan secretly commissioned a custom-made, decadent chocolate lava cake from a famous patisserie. When he presented it, a rare light entered Caleb's eyes, the tips of his ears turning a faint pink. Ethan smiled, telling him happy birthday as he captured the moment with his phone. The setting sun cast long shadows, and it was impossible to tell if the color on Caleb's face was from the golden light or from genuine emotion. Caleb's smile was a small, breathtaking thing. "Thank you, Ethan," he had said. Caleb began to initiate conversations mostly about their studies. Ethan asked him daily if he liked him yet. And every time, Caleb would fall silent, his mouth opening as if to speak, then closing again. Ethan would pretend not to notice, changing the subject, but the disappointment grew. Then Caleb asked to meet him. It was Valentine's Day, and a heavy rain was falling. Ethan waited under an umbrella outside Caleb's modest apartment building for what felt like an eternity. When Caleb finally appeared, his eyes were red-rimmed. He looked broken. Before Ethan could ask what was wrong, Caleb rushed forward, his movements frantic and uncontrolled. He clenched his fists, raising a hand as if to strike, but let it fall. He stood in the downpour, his voice frigid, and told Ethan that he had won. Ethan, confused, tilted the umbrella to cover him, asking what he meant, wondering if this was his way of agreeing to be with him. The question seemed to be the wrong one. Caleb's face contorted with rage. He shoved the umbrella away, shouting about his father and threats. He accused Ethan of getting what he wanted. Then he lunged, grabbing Ethan's head and crushing their lips together. It was a brutal, punishing kiss that tasted of rain and desperation. They broke apart, both bleeding slightly. Caleb left without another word, followed by a middle-aged man who smiled obsequiously at Ethan, praising his son and their perfect match. It was Caleb's father. Ethan understood then. He hadn't threatened anyone, but he could guess what had happened. It was a play to curry favor with the Vance family. But it didn't matter. The result was what he wanted. Their relationship, if it could be called that, was a Cold War. They lived together but were like strangers sharing a lease. Communication was non-existent beyond the physical, and even that was a one-sided affair initiated by Ethan. Caleb was always gone, leaving early and returning late. Ethan found himself staring at the empty rooms, the silence a constant companion. He sent a text one evening, telling Caleb he had a work dinner and would be home late, that he'd had their housekeeper prepare Caleb's favorite braised short ribs. The screen of his phone was a long, one-sided conversation. He knew Caleb read the messages even if he never replied. His date was a business arrangement, a marriage alliance to secure a partnership for his father's company. The woman was beautiful, intelligent, just back from Europe. She had laughed and said she could tell immediately he wasn't interested. They were kindred spirits in that regard. They spent 2 hours at a Michelin-starred restaurant, playing their parts. As they left arm in arm, the faint click of a camera shutter confirmed their mission was complete. Just as he was about to release her arm, he saw a familiar figure across the street, a silhouette turning away into the night. On the way home, he stopped at a florist and bought a bouquet of white gardenias. Their scent was rich and intoxicating. He felt a flicker of nervousness, remembering the woman's advice about surprising a lover. He wondered if Caleb had seen him, if he had misunderstood. Rain began to fall again. He held the flowers close as he got out of the car, but the penthouse was dark. A familiar sense of loss washed over him. Caleb didn't like him anyway. He would probably be happy if Ethan was with someone else. Still, he knocked on Caleb's bedroom door. After a moment, it opened. Caleb stood there in a bathrobe, his hair damp from a shower, looking both ascetic and alluring. Ethan cleared his throat and presented the flowers. Caleb's expression soured into disgust. He took a step back as if Ethan were holding something foul. Ethan's face fell, but he explained patiently that he'd bought them on the way home, asking if Caleb didn't like them. Caleb sneered, noting the scent of a woman's perfume and questioning Ethan's story. Ethan tried to explain it was just business, but Caleb cut him off, stating it had nothing to do with him, and began to close the door. It was his last words that broke Ethan's control. Caleb had muttered that if Ethan was going to be with her, he should just let him go, that he wished Ethan would disappear from his sight. Something inside Ethan snapped. He blocked the door, his fist connecting with Caleb's jaw. The carefully wrapped gardenias fell, their white petals crushed underfoot. They didn't speak after that. Days passed in silence. With graduation looming, Caleb was always busy at the university. He had forbidden Ethan from visiting his department. So Ethan arranged to meet at a dimly lit speakeasy near campus. Caleb arrived looking hurried and impatient, demanding to know what he wanted. Ethan slowly finished his drink. Then he announced they were breaking up. Caleb froze, his expression unreadable. He stared at Ethan for a long, silent moment, so long that Ethan thought he would refuse. Then, a corner of his mouth twitched into a stiff, unnatural line as he agreed. For a fleeting instant, on Caleb's face, Ethan saw not relief, but devastation. He swallowed the bitter cocktail and watched Caleb walk out of the bar and out of his life. The day after Caleb left for an overseas program, the Vance empire collapsed. His father was imprisoned. His mother vanished with what was left of the liquid assets. it wasn't a surprise. His father had seen it coming, his only regret being that he hadn't sent Ethan away sooner. But Ethan felt a strange sense of luck. He had managed to break up with Caleb before the fall, sparing him the sight of his ruin. Their futures would now run on parallel tracks, never to intersect. He methodically deleted Caleb's contact information, sealing that chapter of his life away. He finally understood retribution. The scorn of his former peers and the harsh realities of the world hammered his spirit into something cold and hard, until he met Caleb Thorne again. After the fall and the death of his grandmother, Ethan had left the city. He never expected to see Caleb again. Now, under the same roof, he kept to himself, staying in his room most of the time. He assumed Caleb's interest would wane, but his alienation only seemed to provoke him. Caleb began inventing small, meaningless tasks. He'd state that he hadn't bought Ethan back just for decoration, then order him to give him a massage. He would complain it was too hard, then too soft, then that Ethan was too boring. He remained silent, a placid servant, which only seemed to frustrate Caleb more. Ethan eventually realized Caleb found his silence unnerving. A rare feeling of speechlessness overcame him. He finally broke his silence, asking if Caleb didn't used to find him too loud. Caleb had no reply. At the dinner table, Caleb, who normally ate in silence, suddenly broke it. He asked why Ethan hadn't told their housekeeper, Mrs. Lou, to make the food spicier. Ethan was startled, looking up to explain that he had cooked that night's meal. A flicker of something unreadable crossed Caleb's face. He questioned Ethan's ability to cook, remembering a time when he wouldn't have known his way around a kitchen. The privileged son of the Vance family couldn't, no. But a penniless man trying to keep himself and his grandmother from starving had learned. He had also worked in restaurants. He remembered Caleb's preference for milder food, his dislike of anything too salty or spicy. It seemed that in 3 years, a person's tastes could change. He apologized, saying he didn't realize Caleb's palate had shifted. Caleb didn't speak, seeming lost in the revelation that Ethan could cook. After a moment, he pushed his plate away, his appetite gone. He instructed that Mrs. Lou should cook from now on to Ethan's preference. Ethan was left in a state of confusion again. In the second month, Caleb began taking him to social events. Ethan's role was simple: to follow him, to be a prop. Caleb claimed he wanted to make the best use of him, that he was better off serving as a deterrent to unwelcome advances than sitting at home. The peach blossoms, as Caleb called them, were numerous. A woman with a predatory smile and a glass of champagne cornered Caleb, ignoring Ethan completely. The cloying scent of her perfume was overwhelming. Ethan instinctively stepped back, but Caleb pulled him closer, his grip firm, asking the woman if she couldn't see the large person standing right beside him. The woman's smile faltered. She looked Ethan over, dismissing him as a cover story, and purred an invitation for Caleb to join her for a drink later. Caleb looked at Ethan, a silent command in his eyes. Ethan remembered his instructions. After a moment's hesitation, under Caleb's intense gaze, he stepped closer to him. He cleared his throat and informed the woman that Mr. Thorne already had company. Then he took Caleb's hand, lacing their fingers together, and held it up for her to see. The move was so juvenile, so unexpected, that the woman's hand trembled, spilling her champagne down the front of both their trousers. The room seemed to freeze. Without a word, Caleb cleared his throat and, still holding Ethan's hand, led him toward the restroom. It was the first time Ethan seriously considered that Caleb might have lost his mind. While they waited for a driver to bring a change of clothes, Caleb continued to hold his hand, turning it over and examining it. He asked about the calluses. A jolt went through Ethan, and he tried to pull away, but Caleb held fast. He said an ointment could get rid of them. Ethan turned his head, a sour ache in his chest. He remarked that even if the calluses faded, the past 3 years could not be erased. Caleb was still staring at his hand. Ethan took a deep breath and forced a smile, reminding Caleb that their deal was just for a year and that he hoped they could part ways decently. He felt Caleb's grip loosen, and he withdrew his hand. The silence in the small room was heavy. Then Caleb spoke, his voice low, asking what if he didn't want to separate. He closed his eyes, exhaling slowly. He said he liked him. Ethan's head snapped up, searching Caleb's face for any sign of a joke, but there was none. It was impossible. He stammered that Caleb must be drunk. Caleb suddenly pulled him close, his warm breath fanning across Ethan's face, cutting off his words. The kiss was soft, tentative, a stark contrast to their past encounters. Caleb was trying to prove something, but Ethan's mind was a maelstrom of confusion. He shoved him away with all his strength, insisting the joke wasn't funny. He quickly changed and left the restroom, not daring to look back. The idea that Caleb Thorne liked him was laughable. During their 2 years together, no amount of effort had ever thawed Caleb's indifference. He escaped to a quiet terrace overlooking the city, trying to breathe. He replayed every moment of their past, searching for a clue, any hint of affection. The only time he'd ever seen a crack in Caleb's armor was the day he'd broken up with him. But that was likely just wounded pride. He decided the banquet must be over and headed back inside. As he passed the hotel entrance, a group of men were exiting. He stood aside to let them pass. One of them, a tall man with a loud, brash voice, was complaining about the night being too dull. As the man passed, a jolt of recognition went through Ethan. His right ankle, an old injury, gave way and he stumbled to the ground. The man sneered down at him for blocking his way and delivered a sharp kick to his abdomen. Pain exploded behind Ethan's eyes. The man peered closer. It was Parker Jennings. He recognized Ethan and grinned, a cruel, predatory light in his eyes. Ethan's blood ran cold. He knew this man, the heir to the Jennings fortune, a notorious bully who had always held a grudge against him. As Parker advanced, Ethan began to tremble, begging him to stop. Parker's friends asked who he was. Parker laughed, explaining that 3 years ago, this was the man everyone fawned over. Before he could say more, a blur of motion shot past Ethan. Parker was sent stumbling backward. The scene dissolved into chaos. Ethan heard fists landing, grunts of pain, and a voice, Parker's, crying and apologizing. And through it all, another voice, raw with fury, snarling about who the hell he thought he was to touch his people. When the violence subsided, a figure smelling of blood gently lifted him. He was held tightly, securely. It was Caleb. Ethan buried his face in his chest, trembling. He gasped out a single word, blood. Caleb paused, then reassured him his coat was gone. There was no blood. But the pain, Ethan whimpered, the pain. He heard Caleb roar at the driver to go faster. When the Vance family fell, Ethan wasn't left entirely alone. He had his elderly grandmother. As he searched for work, carrying the weight of their survival, all the privileged sons he had once lorded over came out to torment him. Parker Jennings was their leader. With his family's power and a wealth of idle time, he had always been Ethan's rival. When Ethan fell on hard times, Parker was the first to gloat. He offered to support him. Ethan refused. Parker didn't push, simply saying he would wait for Ethan to come begging. Under his influence, no decent job would hire Ethan. He took whatever manual labor he could find. Then his grandmother fell gravely ill. Desperate, he tried to borrow money, but Parker had threatened anyone who might help him. His only option was to go to Parker himself. For the first time in his life, he knelt. Parker had scoffed, telling him there was a price. He wanted to see blood. The bodyguards knew how to please their boss. They chose places that hurt the most. When Ethan tried to dodge, they grabbed his leg and he felt the bone snap. Through a haze of pain, he remembered Parker tossing a wad of cash at him. The bills, stained with his own blood, scattering across his body. The money was never used. The next morning, he received news of his grandmother's death. It was around then that the old Ethan Vance truly died. It had been so long ago, he thought he had let it all go. So when Caleb, his eyes filled with tears, asked him about that past, Ethan was surprised by his own lack of emotion. But Caleb wept. This new Caleb was an imposter, someone who constantly did the unexpected. He apologized, his voice thick with guilt, burying his head in Ethan's shoulder. He said if he had gone abroad later, if he had understood his own feelings sooner, they would never have reached this point. Ethan lay on the hospital bed, listening but not responding. He remembered Caleb's confession. Suddenly, it seemed possible that it was true. But did he have the courage to love again? It felt unreal, like a dream where a long-sought prize was suddenly within reach. Caleb wrapped his arms around him, his voice a desperate plea in his ear. He insisted that he truly liked him and begged Ethan to love him again. Ethan still didn't respond. Caleb's sincerity was so overwhelming it left him adrift. Thankfully, Caleb didn't press for an answer. He explained a few things to the doctors and left. Recently, Caleb was always busy, leaving early and returning late. But every night, he would slip into Ethan's room and lie beside him. He thought Ethan was asleep, but Ethan was awake every time. While cleaning one day, Ethan learned from Caleb's driver that he had permanently severed all business ties with the Jennings family. The driver recounted with glee how Mr. Thorne had also cornered Parker Jennings in a private club and beaten him senseless. Ethan felt a prickle of worry. He asked if Caleb wasn't afraid of retaliation from the Jennings family. The driver dismissed it as a small problem. But judging by how busy Caleb had been, the problem was likely significant. That night, when Caleb slipped into bed beside him, Ethan didn't pretend to be asleep. He asked if Caleb was doing all of this for him. The figure beside him went still, then moved closer. Yes, Caleb whispered, it was all for him. He said if someone bullied him, he would make them pay the price. Caleb's breath was warm on his forehead, and Ethan's heart began to beat a frantic, tidal rhythm. In the silent darkness, he turned his head and kissed him. Caleb shuddered, then pushed himself up, his hand finding Ethan's waist, deepening the kiss. When they parted, Caleb's eyes were shining with a brilliant joy. He asked, his voice trembling, if this meant Ethan accepted him. Ethan nodded, a sense of relief washing over him. Caleb smiled like a fool, pulling him into an embrace as if he were a lost treasure finally found. Caleb's words were a constant refrain in his ear. I love you. The next morning, for the first time in weeks, Caleb was there when he woke up. Ethan asked if the company's affairs were settled. Caleb nodded, emerging from the kitchen with 2 plates of breakfast and placing a soft kiss on his forehead. He said now he could stay with him properly. But the moment was shattered by the shrill ringing of Caleb's phone.